This video is going to be a response to a video that Faithful and Brother Jay did maybe 5 to 6 months ago. Their premise is that there are some portraits that are called Faiyum portraits, and they are supposed to be what the modern day Jews are supposed to look like, or at least the modern day Egyptians are supposed to look like. Their premise is that these portraits resemble the modern day Egyptians. So we want to hear Brother Faithful's explanation and how he came to this revelation that modern day Egyptians look basically like the Egyptians of the antiquities. And, so if they look like the Egyptians of the antiquities, then there's a good chance that Jesus looked like these folks here. And this is basically racism at its finest. And somehow he duped Brother Jay, who was pro-black, to just throw away his blackness and join the pro-white propaganda. So let's take a look at Faithful and see what he has to say.
In the first century. Now, that's not why Christ went into Egypt, by the way. It wasn't to hide amongst people who look like himself. Now, I'm going to go ahead and read this. Mummy portraits or Faiyum mummy portraits, also Faiyum mummy portraits, is the modern term given to a type of naturalistic painted portraits on wooden boards attached to Egyptian mummies from the Coptic period.
Okay, so now we see that Faithful, he got his information from Wikipedia, so we're going to refer to Wikipedia to find out more about this Coptic period. And let's see, the Coptic period is an informal designation for a late Rome Egypt between 3rd century and 4th centuries, and Byzantine Egypt 4th and 7th centuries. So this is basically talking about 3rd century AD, because they're saying 3rd and 4th centuries. How do we know this? Because when you look at this era was defined by the religious shifts in Egyptian culture to Coptic Christianity and ancient Egypt religion until the Muslim conquest of Egypt in the 7th century AD. So we know that happened around 700 AD. So the late Roman era. So this is the late Roman era. Let's find out when the Roman Egypt era began, because this is saying the 3rd and 4th century. That's when these Coptic portraits were created. Let's see. All right, the Roman province of Egypt was established in 30 BC after Octavian, the future Emperor Augustus, defeated his rival Mark Antony, disposed Queen Cleopatra VII, and annexed the Ptolemaic Kingdom of Egypt to the Roman Empire. Okay, so the Roman province of Egypt was established in 30 BC. So let's go back. Okay, the Coptic period is an informal designation for the late Roman Egypt era. So the beginning is before the turn of the century, before 1st century AD. That's the early part. So so when you say that the Coptic period is a formal designation for late Roman Egypt, the late Roman Egypt era, this is talking about 300 years later. So what is Faithful talking about? All right, let's go to let's just go to the article that he pulled up. Okay, let's see here. Mummy portraits or Faiyum mummy portraits is a modern term given to a type of naturalistic painted portrait on wooden boards attached to Egyptian mummies from the Coptic period. They belong to the tradition of panel painting, one of the most highly regarded forms of art in the classical world. In fact, the Faiyum portraits are the only large body of art from that tradition to have survived. Okay, so let's see here. The portraits date to Imperial Rome era from the late 1st century BC, okay, or early 1st century AD onwards. Okay, so he's right on with that. My bad, Faithful. So let's get into it. Let's find out about these Coptic portraits. Okay, these are from the forest, and basically this goes into the history of these portraits. And this is ancient.eu. Okay, so ancient history encyclopedia. So let's go down and see about this period right here. Okay, well let's see. I'll start right here under Kushite rule. Pharaohs remained a significant religious center. The temples and complexes were improved upon and Egyptian artistic designs and influences were replaced or augmented by Nubian art. Okay, Derek A. Wellesby cities sites forests along with cities like Jebel, Barkos, Celeb, Sedina, Kerma, and Kawa as among the most important. The fortress at Faras was occupied through the Meroic period and into the reign of the Nubian king Silko, reigned circa, and this was around 5th century AD. All right, so in the Christian period, Bisphoric was established at Faras, and the remains of 6 churches in the town have been discovered and excavated, as well as pottery shops, which seem to specialize in Christian-themed crafts such as bowls with Christian symbols on them and pendants. The most important archaeological find in Faras from the Christian period has been the rock chapel and the town's cathedral from the Christian Nubian period. Hold on. So this was around the Christian Nubian period because the cathedral walls were adorned with paintings of biblical narratives and intricate detail, as well as portraits of famous citizens. These Byzantine Coptic style paintings were done in tempera on dried plaster and are some of the most exquisite examples of Byzantine art. All right, so this right here is saying that they are on dried plaster, but if you notice, these Byzantine Coptic style paintings, which we see right here when we look at the Faiyum or the Coptic era, is between the Roman Egypt and Byzantine Egypt era. Okay, so that lines right up with this. Okay, so this is talking about Christian Nubia. Okay, so now we see that these Faiyum arts are supposed to be famous people. Like this portrait right here, this is 3rd century, so this really shouldn't even be in the conversation. And so let's see here. They're not really giving you any dates of these portraits. Okay, a portrait from the 1st century. All right, so this is at the museum, but these are supposed to be famous people. So I'm trying to figure out who are these people on these portraits if they're supposed to be famous. Okay, let's go here. Let's translate it. All right, portraits of mummies. All right, so who is this right here? The portrait was found in Antinopolis in 1905, sold in 1907 to the Egyptian Museum in Berlin. All right, so this right here is dating back to the 1st century BC or early 1st century, but it's not telling us who this is. The latter estimate that this style was used until the middle of the 3rd century. So there is no formal information when art ceased. But if these things were in tombs, why aren't there any description of who these folks are? Because if they were in the tombs, I know the tombs have to say, hey, this is such and such. And if it doesn't, then now you got a picture in there to say, give you an idea of who such and such is. But pretty sure there should be some type of note in there. But we don't have any information on who these folks are. I mean, this is weird. But these are Faiyum portraits. There's no information. And let's see what they said about these portraits again. All right, hold on. On the Greco-Roman rule of the people of Faiyum. Okay, so let's see here. Social status. The patrons of the portraits apparently belong to the affluent upper class of military personnel, civil servants, or religious dignitaries. Not everyone could afford a mummy portrait. Many mummies were found without one. Okay, so these are supposed to be well upper echelon people, just like this is saying. And these are Christian Nubians. But if they were upper class and they could afford these portraits, why didn't they have names on them? Why aren't they telling you who these folks are? This is like flabbergasting. So, I mean, let me see if there's more details. Yep, right here saying painted plaster. So that fits the ancient encyclopedia description. And these are supposed to be famous people, but as you see, there is no information on these folks. And why is that? I think I know why. All right, so this is supposed to be around the first century AD, so they're saying. And it's supposed to be the Christian Nubian Coptic period. Okay, is that what we saw? Let's see. Let's go back. All right. Well, right here under the encyclopedia is saying that this is a Christian period from Christian Nubian period. So now they're making me think that Nubians looked like this, or even Egyptians look like this, because that was the premise that Faithful had brought out. So let's go ahead and take a look now. Let's see. Let's see some earlier Egyptians and see how they looked. All right, so this is Amasis, who is basically almost the second. Okay, so this is around 500 years before this portrait. But this looks like a brother. If you look at it, that's a brother. Okay, that's your pharaoh right there. And let's see what it says. All right. Let's see. His successor is Epres at Sais. He almost was the last great ruler of Egypt before the Persian conquest. Okay. So let's see here. Let's see who his successor is. That's a brother too. He got on the same type of hat as the Pope wears. Interesting. But let's see here. But that's a brother. So let's go to the same time period and see what the ancient Semitic people look like. All right, this is Jewish history. And when you go down, let's see what we find. What's this? That's a brother with a beard. Got that beard, that Rick Ross type beard. A Semitic slave, and this is an ancient Egyptian figurine. And this is around the same time of the Babylonian captivity, and this is around 600 BC. All right, let's move on. And we read something about Napata. All right, so Napata was founded in the 15th century BC, so that was 1500. All right, so basically, let's see. All right, so basically the Assyrian invasion and end of the Nubian dynasty. Okay, so when you see around 570, basically a new Kushite king. Okay, so it looks like this Nubian empire lasted the test of time, and at this point, this is 900 years. Okay, so now we fast forward down to 23 BC, and let's see. The Roman prefect of Egypt invaded the kingdom after an initial attack by the queen of Meroe, razing Napata to the ground. And this came from the deeds of the divine Augustus. Augustus claims that a penetration was made as far as the town of Napata, which is next to Meroe. All right, so let's go to another source. All right, this is history. This is ancient Sudan Kush. All right, history, Kush and Rome. All right, in 30 BC, the Romans replaced the Ptolemies as Kush's northern neighbors. All right, ancient Hellenic sources and archaeological evidence reveals a military clash that took place between the Kush and the Romans during the reigns of the Roman Empire, August. Okay, so that's adding up. And Kushite queen Ameneshikato. All right. The clash began as a border conflict. Prior to the conflict, the Romans struck a deal with the Kushite officials at Philae. The deal established Aswan. So Aswan, I think that is Ethiopia and Lower Nubia. All right, so let's go down to the bottom. Y'all can find this by just googling history Kush and Rome. And let's see here. And note on Kush during the Pax Romana. Throughout the 6 centuries of Roman rule over Egypt, Kush had extensively. Okay, so that's before. Let's see. All right. In 24 BC, the Roman authorities in Egypt got occupied with conflicts in Arabia. The Kushites took advantage of the situation and decided to make a move. Under the leadership of Queen Meneshikata, a Kushite military attacked the Roman garrison in Aswan, so that's in Ethiopia. From there, the queen led her military all the way to Thebes and defeated the Roman garrison there. Strabo, a geographer who lived in the 1st century CE, reported that the Kushite queen enslaved the inhabitants and threw down the statues of Caesar. Recent archaeological work uncovered a statue of Caesar at Meroe, buried under the entrance floor of a temple at Meroe, currently in the British Museum. So I'm thinking that's one of the pieces of the statue, which confirms the authenticity of Strabo's story. Let's go down. Strabo wrote about the bloody conflict that ensued between Kush and Romans under the leadership of General Aulus Patronus. However, since Strabo was pro-Roman and was a personal friend of Petronius, he patronized the Roman side of the conflict. All right, so let's go down. According to Strabo, following the Kushite advance, Petronius, a prefect of Egypt at the time, prepared a large military march south. The Roman forces clashed with Kushite armies near Thebes and forced them to retreat to Pushit in Kushite lands. Petronius then sent deputies to the Kushite in an attempt to reach a peace agreement. All right, so quoting Strabo, the Kushites desired 3 days for consideration in order to make a final decision. However, after 3 days, Cush did not respond, and Petronius advanced with his armies and took the Kushite cities of Prentice, south of Maharaqua. From there, he advanced all the way south to Napata, the second capital in Kush after Meroe. Petronius attacked and sacked Napata, causing the son of the Kushite queen to flee. Strabo describes the defeat of the Kushites, which is modern day Sudan, at Napata, stating that he, Petronius, made prisoners of the inhabitants. Okay. This was not the end of the war. The Kushite queen attacked the occupying Roman garrison of Napata, in the words of Strabo, with an army of many thousand men. The Kushites, however, lost the war. The queen then sent messengers to Petronius requesting to speak to the Roman Empire. In response, Petronius sent the Kushite messages to Caesar, who was in Syria at the time. The negotiations in Syria were successful. It is recorded by Strabo that Caesar even remitted the tribute, so he took away the taxes which had been imposed upon the Kushites earlier, although not so clearly defined. The Kush-Rome border seemed to have been somewhere in Dosa, well, whatever that is. All right, so basically you see a treaty with the Kushites, or who are the Sudans. All right, so let's see how, let's see if we can find a picture of those folks. Give me a second. All right, so this is a picture of the Queen of Meroe, or the Queen of Nubia. As you can see, that's a sister, and it's on Atlanta Black Star. So I mean, basically, and I didn't see it on the website, but I believe on that website, yep, there you have it right there. Same lady. That's a sister. I mean, that's a black woman. So basically, you see, in ancient Egypt, they were black. Here go the Semitic slave. Okay, and that could be found at the Hex Museum. All right, let's see here. Here's another. Here's a guy from Egypt. That's Samtik the Third. That's a brother. I mean, that's a black guy. All right, and then when you go to his predecessor, Amos, you see that's a brother. So now you got above Kush, which is in Egypt, you had these type of black folks. Then you had in Nubia, that was below Egypt and really bordering lower Egypt, you have black folks. You got this queen right here. So throughout Egypt, you got black people, and you had pharaohs, and then you got the black queen, and these Nubians, they ruled from 1500 BC all the way to 700 AD. Okay, and now let's go to the Axums. All right, this is basically the kingdom of northern Ethiopia. All right, so this lady, she was bad. She was bad. She ruled all of that. If you go back up to this article, let's see here. Nubia ruled all of that area. So let's see. All right, let's see where I saw that at. All All right, so they called it Aswan. Let's see if Aswan is the same as Asum. Okay, so no, so basically Lower Nubia had extended to Lower Egypt. All right, so that's not as assume Askum. All right, so now let's read about the kingdom of Askum. Was an ancient kingdom located in northern Ethiopia and present day Eritrea, ruled by the Aksumites. All right, and they ruled from first century AD to 940 AD. But let's see here. Let's see what it says. It grew from Proto Aksumite Iron Age period from the 4th century BC to achieve prominence by the 1st century AD and became a major player between the Roman Empire and ancient India. All right. So let's see. The Aksumites erected a number of monumental stelae which served a religious purpose in pre-Christian times. Okay. So this is very important because this is modern day Ethiopia. And let's see here. All right. Evidence suggests that Semitic speaking Ashkemites and Semites are group people who originally spoke other Afro-Asiatic languages from the family's Cushitic branch. So these were still Cushites in Ethiopia. Okay. So if these were still Cushites in Ethiopia that had become Ethiopians, that lets you know that they were still black folks. Okay. So in Ethiopia, you have black folks, which everybody knew. And in Egypt, you have black people, which everybody knew. And look, this Aksum Empire, it went from Ethiopia, Somalia, Djibouti, Sudan, Egypt, Yemen, and Saudi Arabia. Hold on. So this Ethiopian Empire, it ruled Egypt, parts of Egypt, Yemen, and Saudi Arabia. Wait a minute. I thought these people were supposed to look like the Faiyum people. This can't be true. Let's find out how these Exum people look. And let's see. According to the book of Asum, first capital, Mazaber was built by Idiopis, son of Cush. Okay. Now let's see how they look. Let's go to their currency. Okay. Now let's see what this currency looks like. That right there looks like Negroid features. Let me see if I can blow it up. Straight Negroid. So those guys are done, man. Straight done coming with that other doctrine. You know, let's see if there's some more coins. Oh, there you see it right there. Brothers, brothers, brothers. Okay. So you had two dynasties basically ruling separate parts of Egypt, and we see that you have black people in basically Yemen. You know, black people ruled Yemen up to 940 AD. Let's see here. They ruled from 100 to 940 AD. So these are black folks. Okay, so now they say, oh, these Yemens, they look like modern day Yemens. Well, these coins say something different. Okay, when you look at Saudi Arabia, oh, they look like the Saudis today. These coins say something different. Okay, so Ethiopia, those people, they're not the same as they were then. Straight Negroids. Sudan, you know, they still look probably the same. But Egypt, as we see in all these different lands, It's not adding up. So when Faithful comes with all this doctrine saying that the Fayyums are basically what the Egyptians look like, we seeing in three different eras and three different territories that the Egyptians during that time and before looked like black folks. After everybody around him is black, but he wants to say those Fayyum portraits, which were probably mixtures of people who had mixed with the Roman, because they were in the army, so it's obvious, or prominent people that they had mixed with the Romans because they had all these areas had relationships with Rome, but through it all, you see that these coins, even after they made treaties with Rome, they still look black. They still look black, and they might. I mean, the ask assumes that assumes. I don't know if they made a treaty, but you see that they looked black. Okay, let's see here. The Axumites kingdom adopted Christianity as its state religion in 325. Huh. That's around the time of the Council of Nicaea. So there's just so much going on around these times to where it's easy to get caught up and say that the people of Egypt, Jerusalem look like the people that are there now. That's just not the case. Think about it. Rome has been controlling that area since 30 BC. Okay, since 30 BC. 100 years isn't enough time to turn everybody into looking like Fayyums. It's just not statistically possible. Okay, when you still had Jews and communities in Egypt around that time. You had Sudan in Egypt around that time where they looked black. And then you had Kush, Nubia in that land at the same time, and they looked black. And then you had Egyptians in that land that looked black too. So to think that everybody within 100-year period, or by the time Christ was born, in a 70-year period, everybody looked like those mummy portraits, and we still don't know who those mummy portraits are of. They don't have any labels, tags. These people spend all that money to preserve their looks, and we know rich people, they are a narcissist. They're a narcissist. So if they spend enough money on their portraits, you got to be damn well sure that they left names on those portraits as well. So there's a reason why we don't know who those folks are. There's a reason. And it's possible that, Roman influence try to whitewash them back then. I don't know. But I'm just saying it's not adding up. So, Brother Faithful and Brother Jay, that whole spiel that y'all came up with, it just doesn't make sense.
They belong to the tradition of panel painting, one of the most highly regarded forms of art in the classical world. In fact, the Faiyum portraits are the only large body of art from that tradition to have survived. Now, I'm gonna skip ahead at the bottom. Now, actually, you know what? Let me because they'll say he's trying to skip ahead. Let me go ahead and read it. Mummy portraits have been found across Egypt, but are most common in the Faiyum Basin, particularly from the Hawara in the Faiyum Basin, hence the common name. And I'm not gonna even pronounce that Roman city of that word right there, which I'm not going to attempt to pronounce. Faiyum portraits is generally thought of as a stylistic rather than a geographic description. Now again, Faiyum portraits is generally thought of as a stylistic. In other words, it's not just exclusive to there. All right.
Yeah, I had to stop Faithful right there because right here, this is a pivotal point of this whole Faiyum portrait. Faiyum portraits are generally thought as a stylistic rather than a geographic description. So that's letting you know that these portraits are basically for stylists, and it's not even giving you a geographic description of the people. So man, this dude is done, man. That's just a wrap. I don't even have to finish it any longer. You guys already see what time it is. G Checker signing off. Shalom.